There are a number of extraordinary mothers in the Bible. These women obeyed God's calling, served sacrificially, and built a life of faith for their family. I am sure we all have our favorites from this list: Sarah, Rebecca, Jochebed, Hannah, Ruth, Elizabeth, Mary, to name a few. Out of the list of the names, there is one that I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with, and that is Jochebed. Jochebed, a courageous, wise, and extraordinary mother. The meaning of her name is Glory of Jehovah, or Jehovah is our glory. Who is she? She is the mother of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. She's also noted in the Heroes of Faith in Hebrew 11. Also, she's described as the woman whose children became great. And you would agree, because Miriam, the firstborn, was a gifted prophetess and musician who was intimately associated with the two younger brothers in the history of Israel. Aaron, the second child, became Israel's first high priest and the founder of the priesthood. Moses, the lastborn, became one of the greatest national leaders and legislators the world has ever known. Truly, we can learn a lot from the lives of the biblical mothers, especially Jochebed. A little before we go and read the text, I need to set the stage about what is going on at this point in Egypt. A new king in Egypt came to power who was under no obligation to honor Joseph's deeds in Egypt and keep the special arrangement with the Israelites. He was worried that the Hebrews outnumbering and overtaking the Egyptians so that he made them slaves. He also commanded the Hebrew midwives to kill Hebrew baby boys when they were born, but they did not listen to him. Then Pharaoh gave another decree, and the decree was that every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw in the Nile. Let every girl live. So in which case, Pharaoh is saying that if you have a baby boy, after the decree, you're supposed to kill your baby. Okay? Which is strange, but like wickedness anyway. We're going to read the text, and I'm going to read from Numbers 26:59 and Exodus 2:1-10. The reason why I'm reading Numbers 26:59 will become obvious very soon. But the main text is Exodus 2:1-10. Numbers 26:59. And Amram's wife was named Jochebed. She also was a descendant of Levi, born among the Levites in the land of Egypt. Amram and Jochebed became the parents of Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. It's kind of funny how they do it in those days. They always list the boys before the girls, even though the girl is older. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Now we go to Exodus chapter 2:1-10. Exodus chapter 2:1-10. About this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. And that's the reason why I had to read Numbers, so you know the names of the man and the woman that got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that it was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus, reeds, and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in the basket and laid among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood at a distance watching to see what would happen to him. Soon Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the river. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby, the little boy, crying, and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you, she asked. Yes, do, the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. "Take this baby and nurse him for me. The princess told the baby's mother. "I will pay you for your help." So the woman took a baby home and nursed him. Later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own child. The princess named him Moses, for she explained, "I lifted him out of the water." One thing I want to point out very quickly, the time period between the Jochebed taking the child from the princess to the time she returned it. According to scholars, that must have been a period about at least 3 years, because normally they wean the babies that late. So it must have been about at least 3 years, and it could be longer than that. I've seen cases already about, like Isaac, for instance, was I think about 5 years before he was weaned. Anyway, so it got some time. The point I'm trying to make, there was a time period, a significant time period between the time Jochebed took the baby from the princess to when she had to return it. Anyway, as we know, mothers are an integral part of our lives. We wouldn't be where we are today without our mothers. Even some of the greatest people in history said something following about their mother. For instance, what George Washington said, "All I am, I owe to my mother." Even Abraham Lincoln said that behind every great man is a great mother. So this is also true in the case of Moses, because being one of the greatest men of the Old Testament, Moses became the kind of man he became because of the type of mother he had. Now, from the story that we just read, there were a few things I want to point out to be able to understand exactly what she went through and why she's courageous, and also as somebody that we need to take a look at, somebody we can emulate. She lived in a very hostile environment for what we read. One, she was a slave, okay, at that particular time in Egypt. If you read Exodus chapter 1, 13 through 14, Exodus 1, 13 through 14, it reads, "The Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands." So we are aware of the fact that she was expecting another baby. And this was at the time that the decree already went out to say that if you have a baby boy, you have to kill your boy. So, and also, one of the other things that we need to understand is that at that particular time, there were crocodiles in the Nile. So basically, you are giving your baby as a food for the crocodiles. That's what it boils down to, which is kind of crude, unfair punishment. But anyway, she was aware of that, all that going on at that time. You can imagine the sleepless nights to be praying to God to say, "Let it be a girl," because they don't have the fancy technology that we have today to figure out whether it's going to be a boy or a girl. Yeah, let it be a girl so that I don't have to go through this ordeal, okay? But unfortunately, as we all know, that she gave birth to a baby boy. So now the problem starts. She's also very, very courageous, of course, based on what we read, because what happened was that she looked at the baby from what we read. She looked at the child and saw that it was a fine child. There's some translation that says fine child. Other translations use godly or goodly or special baby. The one that I like is the one in the Acts 7:20. King James Version that says, "well pleasing to God," in which case there was something special about this baby that he can see that says, no, we're not gonna get rid of this baby. So as a result of that, of course, she had to come up with a plan. And from what we know, she must have been, somehow God must have impressed on her to say, this child is a special child that I'm going to do something with. One of the other possibility is the fact that maybe they remembered, maybe somehow God was able to reveal to them what Abraham said many years ago, because there was a promise from God to Abraham that says You can be sure your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. So it is possible that somehow they knew something about what God told Abraham, and for that reason it was also revealed to them that they should not kill this baby. Now, one of the other things I need to point out is that there's a lot of similarities between Moses and Jesus, and I want to point out a few of them. Moses and Jesus were born during times of God's people being oppressed. Moses was born when the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt. Jesus was born when Israel was under Roman rule. They were both hidden as baby because the leaders at the time wanted them dead. Pharaoh ordered all Hebrew males to be murdered to control the growth of the population. When he was 3 months old, Moses' mother put him in a basket along the line, along the Nile River, where he was found and adopted by a daughter of Pharaoh. King Herod feared the processes of Jesus' birth and ordered all boys under 2 in Bethlehem to be killed. Jesus' parents fled to Egypt until Herod died. Moses was adopted as a slave into a royal family. Jesus, as the Son of the Most High, is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Yet he took the form of human flesh and became adopted as the son of Joseph. Moses, of course, prophesied that the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me among you from your brothers. It is him you shall listen. You shall listen. So this the prophecy of Moses was fulfilled, of course, by Jesus. So what I'm trying to say is the fact that God must have been behind the idea that Jochebed came up with. That's where I'm going. But so by God's grace and mercy, she was given the time to lay the foundation for a child. And God used those early years of preparing Moses for the calling that was going to happen over about 400 years later. One thing for sure, if you go and look at Hebrews 11:24 to 26, Hebrews 11:24 to 26, it says that by faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasure of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. So he looked to the reward. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that the period of 3 to 4 years gave Jochebed the time to pour into Moses, to the fact that he didn't forget who he was. Now, the next thing I want to point out is the fact that Jochebed put a situation in God's hand. Because again, this is a situation that's bigger than what she can handle. So she put the situation in God's hand. Now, she knew as time went on, of course, that she has to do something. She has to do something, and I'm saying that by her prayers was answered with a divine revelation to say this is what you should do, and that's how she built. Some translation, instead of calling it a basket, called it an ark made out of reeds, and with she painted it with asphalt and pitch so that it wouldn't leak. So the water won't get to the baby, and put the baby in it and put it at the bank of the Nile River, and then told the sister to stand and watch over the basket. Now, one of the other things is the fact that the papyrus reeds that she used is believed to be a protection against crocodiles. So maybe when they smell it, they wouldn't go near it, so that the ark or the basket will be safe. Now, one thing that reminds me, of course, remember when God was going to get rid of the people of the world because of the wickedness in the days of Noah. Okay, he told Noah to build an ark. So in this case also, he told Jochebed to build a small ark. Okay, so there is some salvation that came through the ark in the days of Noah, and salvation that also saved Jochebed. Saved Moses from the crocodile in this particular case. It brings to mind also Psalm 46, 1-3, that says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. The whole idea is the fact that God, if we depend on God, it would always come through for us. Another thing that we notice about Jochebed is our faith in God. Even though she knows what was going on, babies are being murdered every day, and she didn't understand why God was allowing this to happen. Because again, when you see things go on, one of the questions that we always ask is, why me, God? Okay, or why is this happening at this particular point? But at that particular point also, we need to build up our faith, just like she did, to say that I know for sure God is going to provide this baby. I see something special in this baby, and I know that God is going to come through. So one of the things we need to be aware of is the fact that we all have at the beginning what is called a saving faith that allows us to say we believe in Jesus Christ. But on top of that, we also need to have what is also called sustaining faith in the sense that we believe the word of God and we know that God is going to act accordingly. So if God says this is what I'm going to do, then no matter what we are going through, which is what Jochebed did, she held on to that faith in God to come through for her. If you go back and look at Ephesians 6:16 says that above all, put on the shield of faith, by which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. The shield of faith is a piece of armor that we are to use to quench the flaming arrows from the enemy. One other point I want to make is the fact that our faith must be firm, because God is not going to make you firm. But you have to believe enough in God to be able to stand on your faith, to be able to stand. What I'm heading is the fact that you get what your faith has prepared for you. Okay, you get what your faith has prepared for you. If your faith says this is what is going to happen, that is what you're going to get. If your faith doesn't say, if your faith is not standing, then you're not going to get anything. That is one of the things I want to make sure we all understand, that we have to build our faith to the point that we know for sure, yes, God said it, I believe it, and I'm going to stand for it. I am not going to let the devil tell me otherwise. And that's the reason why it's important to be able to read the Bible, to understand situations that are very similar to what you are going through, and build your faith upon that. For instance, in the case of Jochebed, this was a situation that is totally impossible, because what is she going to do? She's powerless. She has no power. She can't change the law. She can't change anything. Well, all she was able to see by looking at the baby was the fact that, hey, there is something special about this baby. Don't kill this baby. And she held on to that faith that says, something is telling me not to kill this baby. It must be God that is telling me not to kill this baby. I am going to wait on God to tell me what I'm supposed to do. And when that came, she held on to that faith and did exactly what she was told to do. The other thing, of course, I want to point out is that faith comes with faithfulness comes with a price and a reward. There's a price we have to pay. There's also a reward that comes along with it. Okay, in the case of Jochebed, okay, she was giving up something she couldn't keep anyway, but in the process of God, she got something better, and I'm going to explain. Now, one thing for sure is the fact that she, instead of believing that she is hopeless, of believing what the world is saying, what the Pharaoh is saying, what the culture is saying, what the society is saying, she held on to the truth that she perceived by looking at the child, okay? She also recognizes the limits of the parental control, okay? Because again, in this particular case, she couldn't say, I am not going to give the baby up, because that's not going to work either, right? Okay? So, which goes on to also remind us that we have to stand on faith, like Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it is impossible to please God. For whoever will draw near to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who seek him. So she was rewarded by being reunited with a child, as we read. And not only that, she was paid to keep the child. Okay, so she was paid extra. She was paid to keep her own child, like she was being paid to keep her own child. So that's an example of the fact that sometimes God is going to bless you is beyond what you ask for or you think that is what you're going to get. So that's. But we also know that the two things that happened was the fact that she was not the one that named the child. It was the princess that named the child Moses. So that's something that she couldn't do also. Not only that, even though she was able to nurse the child, but it was only for a very short time. She had to give up the child eventually. But it's for a good. One of the things that we don't know, whether Jochebed saw Moses, okay, growing up, and not only that, which would be a stretch because it was 40 years after, in which case I'm sure they lived long in those days anyway. So maybe Jochebed got to see Moses come back when after the 40 years in wilderness to actually deliver the Israelites out of that bondage in Egypt. But again, the Bible didn't say. I am just saying that because the Bible doesn't tell us everything. If the Bible tells us everything, we'll be like, not even fill this room anyway. So I'm just guessing that maybe God also gave her the chance to be part of the people that left Egypt, to be able to see her son come back and be the role of being the leader to be able to deliver them out of Egypt. One of the other things I want to also point out is the fact that God is faithful. When God tells you to do something and you do it, you'll get the result, or better than the result that you anticipated. Couple of things that we noticed, the fact that it was no accident when Pharaoh's daughter saw the beautiful baby crying that she had compassion on him. It was already something that God already put in place. Not only that, God began to move in the heart of the daughter of a pagan king at the exact time that the baby arrived by the edge of the Nile. Now, one of the other things, of course, is the fact that in those days, Pharaoh and all those great kings have their own private bath. So why would that princess wanted to go swim or wanted to go take a bath in the dirty water? Okay, that's another thing we don't understand. But God was working behind the scenes to make sure at the time that the baby was in the Nile, the princess would show up and go make the excuse that I want to go take a bath exactly at the same time. Not only that, okay, we know that the Egyptians don't like the Israelites, okay, because of the fact that the cultures are totally different. They say a lot of things that Israelites do that Egyptians don't quite appreciate. So it was obvious that the hatred of the Egyptians, God overcame that also, because when the princess saw the baby, right, and the baby was crying, she had compassion on the baby, okay? And instead of saying, oh, this is an Hebrew, even she said it herself, this must be one of the Hebrew boys or Hebrew children. And because of the hatred, maybe the next thing that would expect to happen was the fact that throw him in the water, but that didn't happen. She had compassion on him, right? Maybe it's something that has to do with a woman's heart, and the baby steers the meeting, right? And therefore you can't say no, right? Who knows? But anyway, God planned that also. All that is going on, and that is not something that Jochebed could do. Was God orchestrating all these things in the background? Not only that, the sister was also standing by, and she had the sense to go ask. Okay, because the mother wouldn't know what would happen. She just say, "Hey, stand there and let's see what's going to happen." But the sister had enough sense, again, another prompting by God to say, "Go ask the princess to say, what do you want somebody to nurse this baby for you?" And the princess said, "Yes." Again, this is God working in the background to make sure that his plan is going to come to pass. And there is nothing that people can do to upset that plan of God. We also know that for 40 years, Moses was living as a prince in Egypt. So in which case, he went to all the best universities, best education, best everything that he could get. In actual fact, if you read in Acts 7:22, Acts 7:22 says that Moses was learned in all the wisdom of Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. Some people would say that he was being trained to be a pharaoh because he was that good. He was that good in terms of what he could do. And that's what, when they say mighty in words and deeds, was that, he's a mighty warrior. He was able to do all the things that they would expect an eventual pharaoh to do. But somehow within him, he knew that he wasn't an Egyptian. He knew that he was an Israelite. And we know the story, of course, that he murdered one of the Egyptians. And because of the fact that that was being known, was becoming known, he had to flee for 40 years into the wilderness. Anyway, to put all this together, all I'm trying to say is this, that the eye of the Lord are always on the righteous. His ears are open to their cry. So one of the lessons that we get out of today, of course, is the fact that it pays to be righteous. It pays to be able to be obedient to God, because again, he's always going to listen to our cry and help us out. A couple of other things I also want to point out is the fact that there's a limit for how much you can protect your child or children. But all their lives, we should be preparing them to live, because eventually they're going to live anyway. Okay, so in the case of Jochebed, one of the things that we saw was the fact that she took the 3 or 4 years to pour into Moses, to make sure that Moses doesn't forget who he is. And that's the lesson. One of the things that we all, as parents, we should learn is the fact that while we still have them, take the advantage of that period, because whether you like it or not, they're going to leave eventually. So let's keep that in mind. The other thing that we learn from that, if you go back and look at the story of Abraham, one of the things that God told him, and one of the things that God was proud about him, was what he told us in Genesis 18:19. Genesis 18:19 to say, "I have singled him out so that he would direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised." In which case, God knew that Abraham would teach his sons and he would teach his family the way of the Lord. So it's very important for us to take the time to make sure that we teach our children the way of the Lord, so that when they eventually leave, just like after Moses left Jochebed, the teachings were still in him, and he would continue to be able to serve the Lord as we see in the story. The other thing I want to point out is that God has a plan for his people. God has a plan for his people. we see the determined faith of Jochebed. We also see what God did in response to the faith of Jochebed. One of the things we gotta keep in mind is that our children are called to be salt in this earth, like Miriam, like Aaron and Moses. So one thing we gotta be aware of is the fact that if we are faithful to God, no matter what is going on, God is always in control. So a mother who loves the Savior, who has a more severe anguish when she knows that not only the life of the child, of our child is at stake, but the soul can rest in the assurance that God of Jochebed still lives and is able to save a dear one from eternal damnation. What I'm trying to say is the fact that no matter what we are going through with our children, as long as we hold on to God, okay, God will still hear our prayers. God will turn things around to be able to make sure that they serve Him. And finally, well, almost getting to the end anyway. It's important also to grow. It is important for us to grow. One of the things that they said in Hebrew 11:23 was that it was by faith that Moses' parents hid him for 3 months when he was born. They saw that God has given them an unusual child. We have to have the ability to see. That's where I'm going. We have to have the ability to be able to hear. And that only happens when we grow. If we don't take the time to grow, we're not going to be able to see, we're not going to be able to hear. So it's important that in our walk with God, we can be at the same spot from year to year. We have to constantly strive to get better, because it's through that ability that she had, through the growth that she had, that they could perceive, they could see, and they could also hear what God is telling them to do. So we need to draw closer to God, and we know that as we come closer to God, God is going to come closer to us. That's the reason why we need to wash our hands as sinners and purify our hearts. For our loyalty is not to be divided between the world and God. It should be in one focus on God and God alone. Finally, one thing I want to also point out is the fact that God has chosen to work in and through common people like you and me to achieve on the common work that is God for each and every one of us. God doesn't ask us if we're able to do it. All He's asking us to be humble ourselves, okay, and listen to Him. The success of what He's asking us to do doesn't depend on our ability. It depends on our faithfulness to Him. So it's important that we are faithful to God no matter what we are going through. We are faithful to God no matter what we're going through. Putting all this together, all I'm trying to say is the fact that when trials come our way, we must learn to be patient and trust and wait. The time of darkness is planned by our Heavenly Father to bring praise and glory to Him in the great day when Jesus returns. God, who is the great architect of our destiny, allows nothing to come into our lives except that which is for our ultimate good and blessing. So when something is happening to you, don't say, why me? Ask God, what is going on? What do you want me to do? You're telling me something. If you're not hearing it properly, then you need to spend time with God to make sure that you understand what God is telling you or why that situation is happening to you. But the whole idea again is that we all have to grow. And things sometimes we don't want to listen. Sometimes you say, well, I'm comfortable where I'm at. Okay. Remember, the disciples were comfortable in Jerusalem until persecution came, right? And they had to flee. And it's because of the fact that they flee from Jerusalem is where Samaria was saved and all the other places. So we need to take advantage of whatever situation that we're going through to make sure that we give glory to God.